So now let's look at how we can create variables in Java. Now this is going to be the last time where I'm actually creating project with you, right? Because from now on I'm just going to be creating the project, and you can really choose however you would like, right? Whether you want to create a new project or you just want to keep working in the same one, right? And in this case we're going to use a template, right? So here we're going to create a new one, right, over here. Then we have the same thing, Java, right? We're going to click next. And over here we have create project from the template, right? And over here we're going to check the box over here, and you can see it over here. Simple Java application that includes the class main, right? Over here, the main method over here, and we just click next. And over here again, this is going to be project name. So I'm going to say create variables over here like this, right? And you can see this base package, and the package is basically our way for us to organize the code, right? So we can just leave it over here, company over here like this, right? Or you can write your name or however you would want, right? So I'm going to say over here finish, and again we are back in our old screen, right, which we already know, right? We have the project on the left and editor on the right, but you can see over here, right, we have the package and the public class main over here like this. If we're going to go back over here again under the source, right, we already know that this is going to be over here our file, which is going to have the same name as over here our class. Now over here this is going to be our main method over here, right? And what we're going to do over here, we're going to start working with a variables. And over here, the first thing that I would want to say, and just as a notice, right, this is going to be the single line comment, right, 2 forward slashes, and this pretty much what it means is that whatever you write over here after this forward slash, the computer doesn't run that, right? So this is not going to appear in your program. So the comments are very useful for us to actually leave the comment of what we have done, right? So later on, this is really good if somebody else is going through our program or for us, right, to remember what we actually did, right? Of course, right now we're writing very, very simple programs, applications, right? So this is not very practical right now to write long comments. However, if you have lines and lines of code, this becomes very useful very fast, right? That's just a side note. For the variable, right, the first thing that we will need is a data type, or like this, right? So I'm going to say type, and over here you can see that this is gray, so nothing is happening, right? Because again, I have commented this one out. Then we would need a variable name, so I'm going to say variable over here name, and the last thing that we will need is actual value, right? So I'm going to say equal sign, right? And we would need value. Now we have a primitive over here and non-primitive data types. In the next video, we're going to start covering the primitive data types, which are going to be 8. And then after that, we're going to deal with non-primitive, right? So I'm going to say versus non, and I'm going to say primitive. So these are going to be data types. Since we're not going to be diving them deep into them right now, right? We're just going to use one data type. That's going to be int. That's going to stand for integer. Or here like this, right? So on our examples, we're gonna all the time use the integer, but that's not the only data type, right? Just keep in mind there's gonna be more, and we're gonna be, like I said, covering in the next video. So first we write a data type, right? So this is gonna be int. Then over here, what we want to do is have the actual name, right? Just for simplicity, I'm just gonna say a, right? Then what we would need to do is actually place a semicolon, right? And now we have declared the variable, right? So but declaring is the first part, because if you go back over here and we have a print a string, right? South system out println, and if we'll try to print a string over here, this variable, let's see what happens, right? But I can already give you a hint. Over here you can see that this is not good, right? Every time you see that this is error found. And once we run it, over here you can see that we're going to have a variable might not be initialized, right? Because we're here using a data type, and then naming the variable is just the first step, right? After that, we need to initialize, right? So here we need to basically assign the value. So in this case, I'm just going to say this is going to be 20 over here. And again, let's run it one more time over here like this, and then see what happens, right? So first of all, you can see that everything here is fine, right? So we can close this window over here, and over here you can see that this is going to be 20. Now that is not the only way how we can actually initialize the variable. We can also write something like this. So here, if I'm going to say int, and again I'm just going to use b, and over here I'm going to place a semicolon, and over here I can just say that, listen, b is going to be equal to 10 over here like this, right? So basically I'm initializing it in the next line, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? So again, we're going to use the south, and we're going to place B over here, right? And then we're going to again run it, and then we'll see what happens, right? So over here now this guy is going to be 10, right? So everything is working fine. Now the next thing that I would want to do is actually look at what are the other ways how we can do this, right? Now we can also do it if the data type is going to be the same, right? So let's say I'm going to add few more over here, the integers, right? What I can do over here, I can just write int over here, and then I can say C over here, D, and let's say E, right? So all of them are going to be integers, right? And pretty much I'm declaring them right now, right? And over here, what I would want to do is, let's say I'm going to say this is going to be C. This is going to be equal to, I don't know, 12 over here, right? Then we'll have a D equal to, let's say, 15. Then over here, the E is going to be equal to, let's say, 25, right? So I can also do it this way. Now, like I showed you in the previous video, right? We also have a option, right? Where we basically can change the value, right? So just because B over here, I said that this is going to be equal to 10, right? If I go into the next line, if I'm going to write over here 20, or like this, and if I'm going to say, you know what, I want to run it, let's see what happens, right? And now, of course, both of them are 20, right? Because I have a 20 over here, right? And over here, I have a B20. Now, after that, let's look at how actually Java is case sensitive, right? So if I'm going to go back over here, and if I'm going to write int, and over here, I'm going to have a capital letter A, right? If I'm going to say 30, right? Do you think that this is going to override this, right, over here, right? Or not? And the actual quick hint is not. Because again, this is different A than this one, right? So whenever you're actually naming the variables or you're trying to access your variables, be very careful of how you actually have named them, because it really does matter, right? What kind of case of the letter it is, right? And the last thing about variables is do not use a first character as a number. So don't do it something like this, right? So don't do 2, 3, and let's say 2A, 4 something, right? Over here, you can see right away it's yelling back at you, right? It cannot resolve this, right? Because basically what's happening is it is expecting over here a letter, right? Letter, $sign or underscore, right? However, most preferably is always letters. Now the case is, do not try to make some kind of secret abbreviations, right? So when I was working over here with these integers, right, just for the sake of simplicity, I was writing over here A, B, and over here C, D, E, right? In general, try to stick to, let's say, number, let's say, and have some kind of clue of what it is actually, right? Again, you'll have long programs to write, right? So it makes much more sense if we have integer, let's say in this case, this is going to be number 1, right? And obviously we're going to go back over here and we're just going to change this one, right? So I'm going to say number 1 over here, right? And I'm just going to delete this, right? Because this is messing up our view. So this is how we can actually create a variable. Now let's go ahead and let's actually start working with primitive data types, right? For the variables.